future.
2007 was the year Halo 3 struck, the first Halo on the 7th generation Xbox 360. Being a next generation game, it brought with it a slew of new innovative and industry staple features. Among these features was a ranking system, a match playback feature or theater,
actually watch bullets start coming out and to watch the guy get shot back, to watch that in slow motion and to see how cool that ragdoll.
and perhaps most notably, Forge, Halo's map editor.
The save films in Forge, I think, represent the coolest features that we have in Halo 3.
We're giving them the tools to basically play Halo how they want to play it.
Halo 3's Forge was never very complex. There weren't many things you could do outside of placing weapons, walls, and crates around the map. And that's what I think Bungie intended it to be, a tool to allow you to make small but gameplay altering changes to fit a certain game mode like Infection for instance. But given how vast Halo 3's community was, creative masterpieces were bound to emerge. These maps made by the community were so awesome that they were included in matchmaking. Forge gave birth to some iconic maps, and it was here to stay in the Halo franchise going forward. Along came Halo Reach in 2010, and with it came a new and improved Forge. The highlight of Reach's Forge was arguably not the mode itself, but the canvas. Enter Forge World, to this day one of the biggest and greatest Forge canvases.
The first time I looked at Forge World and I was like, oh hey cool, that's, oh holy, you guys did what?
There's just way too much. You can't keep it all in your head at once. It was so beyond our production capability, we were just like, you know, that's crazy, we can't do that. I couldn't stop the artist who started creating it.
Again, Reach gave birth to some iconic maps. The community had mastered Forge at this point, and were eager to see what the next installment had to offer from this mode. This was an exciting time to be a Forger. When 2012 came around, the Halo scene had changed drastically. Halo Reach wasn't pulling huge numbers anymore. Bungie had retired from the Halo franchise and moved on as an independent developer, eventually being acquired by Activision. A new developer was now in charge of Halo, 343 Industries. Though the company was composed of many of the same people, Halo had now set course for new horizons, a new vision. Halo 4 was a very story-driven game, and unfortunately as a consequence, the multiplayer side of things got less development. Halo 4's Forge fell under this umbrella. Halo 4 introduced some good features to the mode, such as magnetism among a few others, but overall it wasn't a huge upgrade. In fact, many argue it was a downgrade given how all the pieces looking the same limited creativity. This demotivated the community, resulting in fewer staple and iconic maps. Something had to change, and it had to be big. And so, the wait began for the next Halo. In 2014, Halo the Master Chief Collection came out, featuring Halo 2 Anniversary and its Forge mode. And this one was a huge upgrade. You could now do a lot more, there was more variety. Now you could script items to move automatically or at command. This was truly the most feature-packed Forge mode up until that point. But again, unfortunately due to the state of the rest of the game, it never really took off. There were some great gems, sure, but there weren't any iconic or mainstay maps. When Halo 5 came out in 2015, it was met with harsh critique for missing a lot of content on launch, and Forge was one of them. but over the course of its life, new features were consistently added to the game, and 6 months in came Forge, and I'd say it was well worth the wait. Halo 5's Forge is undoubtedly the greatest map editor of any Halo game. It's allowed us to come the closest we have ever come in creating maps as close to developer made in terms of quality. You had a lot more to play around with, scripting was even better, all around making it the best Forge mode to date. But as the age-old saying goes, there's always room for improvement. Though the Halo 5 mode is fantastic, there's certainly a few things that the community would like to see added. So hey everyone, my name is Mr. Macho, and today we are joined by Ducain, Ascent Hyperion, Skoopa, and Kim from Unsorted Gaming as we answer the question, how Halo Infinite can perfect Forge.
Alright, so what I want in Halo Infinite's Forge, I'm sure I will forget some things, and I'm sure some other people will mention stuff that, that I also want, but some of the main aspects of Halo Infinite's Forge that I want personally is, one, placeable water volumes, which would be incredible for recreating maps or just, like stuff like Beaver Creek and everything, and Valhalla, so you can have actual water in there. But then, of course, making your own map to feel a little bit more alive, a little bit more realistic, where you don't have to do the shield, or the decal trick and everything. So it would be nice to be able to actually have, some real water to be able to put in. And then you can also adjust the water, maybe the colors and things like that, so you can have the colors look green at different times and have different effects maybe onto the waters, where you can have them look like some sort of acid or poison or something, or even goes into lava, like you could change it to where it's a lava type of volume. But that would be awesome to be able to just have different type of, I guess, liquid volumes. So you can have, just really make your map completely unique. Another thing that I extremely, this is something that I really want that is super important. Of course, it's not a deal breaker, but it would be awesome to be able to have, is a terrain editor, a proper voxel terrain editor. Something similar to how Far Cry is, where you can just, raise and lower the land however you want. So that way you could start your map off with a flat surface. They can have a forge canvas just of a flat surface, and you actually sit there and control, raise, lower the land, make caves and everything like that with this, terrain editor. So that way you don't have to waste pieces on building your terrain. I remember whenever I made Forge World, pretty much my entire object count, making Forge World in Halo 5 was just terrain. It was either terrain or rocks, pretty much. And so, it would be nice to be able to actually just, not have to worry about using objects to be able to, have the terrain. Another thing that I would love to have is just better scripting, more solid and, less buggy scripting. Because right now in Halo 5, there's issues with trying to, a lot of times trying to get things to rotate. Of course, you could really work to try to get that to, happen, but it would be nice if it was just a lot more simple. You don't have to go through a whole bunch of crazy scripting things that get things to rotate, perfectly the entire time without ever messing up. So it would be just nice to have more simplistic scripting, to where if you just want an object to rotate, you could just kind of script it to rotate very easily, and then of course you can have the more advanced scripting to where you could go into some crazy things. And another thing I think most everyone wants is AI in Forge. AI was great. I know Tom French, he wanted things like water volumes and AI in Forge in Halo 5, but they literally cannot add anything else into Halo 5, not even emblems into Halo 5, so they have maxed out the memory, and so that he wasn't able to do things like that in Halo 5, so it would be nice, that we can get some sort of AI, and, just have, so you can make yourself a multiplayer map, or even a race map, since I love race, and you can have AI battling it out on the track back and you can run over some of them or something like that, or they can mess you up. Some of them could be throwing nades at you and try to mess you up while you're racing or while you're just fighting anyone else. It would just be fun to be able to have those type of things. And then the last thing that I'm going to probably say that I want is colorable objects of everything. Every single object in the game I want to be able to color. All vehicles I want to be able to color different colors, and all, you know, objects like the typical building structure objects and things like that I want to be able to color. But then also all natural objects. That includes, you know, things like grass and trees and rocks and stuff. So you can do some crazy stuff. And then of course people can use all those crazy color type of things to create cool art and stuff. That's something really awesome that people make in Halo 5's Forge and all past Forges and everything, is cool, like, you know, just art. It's just like big old, like, you know, transformers and stuff like that. And of course if they're able to color certain objects, you can actually make certain, you know, creatures look like they have hair, because you could put bushes all over their body and you could color brown or something like that. It would just be really cool to be able to have these type of things. But that is pretty much what I would love to be able to have added into Halo Infinite's Forge. And I hope y'all enjoyed this, and remember, let's forge a new Halo.
What's good, everybody? I'm Ascend Hyperion, Community Manager at Forge Hub, proprietor of the Extermination game type, and curator of many matchmaking maps, and the creator of Dreamscape and Cyberside, maps that you may have played in matchmaking in Halo 5. I think it's important to start by highlighting just how much farther Halo 5 Forge pushed the tool. Ever since its inception, each new title kinda nudged Forge forward with one or two extra tools or tricks, which was great, but man, if going from Halo 3 to Reach was a nudge, I'd say going to Halo 5 was like getting hit by a semi-truck. In the 5 versions of Forge to come before, we saw that the community had this intrinsic ability to turn the tool upside down and create good maps and fun custom games from a pool of maybe 100 objects at best. This issue remained, though, that the Forger was always limited by these mono-themed, often non-universal piece selections provided. Regardless of how good a map was, it was hard to have a standout map because they were all trapped within the same visual style. And then Halo 5 rolled around and you saw this explosion of forgers who could create these detailed, highly detailed, immersive environments and themes on their maps to complement the layout that came with it. So we're at this point now where Forge has really laid itself out for the forger, and 343 just kinda said, go at it, make it, let's see it. Here are the dev-esque tools, here's the in-depth features, lighting, scripting, textures, so on. Your move, player. And man, I think the Forge maps really speak for themselves in how the quality and the style changed when given those tools and options. Now as we look towards Infinite, I want to interject some things that I've learned from years and years of forging and playing Forge maps from Halo 5. And, I mean, without exaggeration, I've played hundreds of maps from hundreds of different people. We need Forge to be as rock solid in performance as possible. Often forgers find themselves jumping through hoops to maximize and use Forge tools while avoiding issues that break maps way more often than they should. When I first joined Forge Hub, one of my first articles was actually about how to avoid dropping from 60 FPS because it's such a huge issue that affects nearly all forgers, and if you're someone that has a matchmaking map as a goal for yourself, having performance drops like that is actually an immediate disqualifier in most cases. There are dozens of quirks and glitches beyond that need to be monitored and sidestepped, and it puts a tight leash on the forger, which sucks because they could do so much more otherwise. I want to see all the tools we had in Halo 5 come back, and maybe even expanded. I want 343 to lay it on, give us terrain manipulation, give us AI, give us skybox creation. We want it and we will use it, there is no doubt. But above all that, please just make it work as well as possible, as often as possible. The tools are great, they're amazing, but if we can't use them fully, it's like building a house with a rubber mallet and plastic screws.
Hello, my name is Kim, more known as Unsorted Guy or Unsorted Gaming. First off, I would like to thank Mr. Macho here for including me in his video. That's pretty awesome. But let's get down to business. There is so much that I want out of the next Forge mode. Mentioning everything would be nearly impossible for me to do, but there's definitely some key elements that I want. First off, I want a completely different terrain editor. I don't want to spawn single terrain pieces, even if that can be useful sometimes. I'd rather have a similar terrain sculpting system as other map editors and game engine have, like Far Cry 5, Project Spark, or even Roblox. Halo 5 have 5 different Forge canvases, but I would actually prefer to only have one single empty one, where you can customize your own canvas. Some of the customization options could be different skyboxes, such as a canyon, a forest, a city, in space, inside high surety, or the more options the better. Basically, I want to customize my own Forge canvas, actually to the point where people solely makes canvas maps. I must admit, after making some maps in Far Cry 5, that Forge map looks for the most part kinda bad in comparison. So I hope with the new engine and stuff that we can make our map look much more realistic and not so plastic looking. Don't get me wrong, I'm still super happy with Halo 5, but I would prefer some more realistic looking map, so then we would need more textures, better lighting, and being able to add more details without performance loss. What else I really want is some kind of system where I can link my map to a game mode, so that it would be easier and faster for players to grab both the map and the correct game mode at the same time. Maybe when you bookmark a map, it will automatically bookmark the game mode as well. Or maybe when you're about to play a certain map, the game will ask the host to play with the pre-selected game mode for that map or not. Something that everyone has been asking for ever since Forge became a thing is having spawnable NPCs. And I really understand why. It can be really fun to play against the NPCs or doing experiments with them. I would imagine it will be most commonly used for making firefight maps. Firefight is the best main reason for having spawnable NPCs in the first place. But I do know myself, I will most likely make linear single player maps with NPCs in it. And oh, imagine all the single player maps people will start remaking. Instead of only remaking multiplayer maps from the previous Halo games, we would remake entire single player levels. That will be so fun. These are just some features that I want, and I'm crossing my fingers that Forge will be amazing in Infinite, but that's all I have. Thanks and bye.
Alright, so I want to first take a moment to thank everyone for their time and their ideas. Links to all of their channels is in the description. Definitely go subscribe to them. Alright, so now it's my turn, and what I'll do is I'll summarize everything so far and add my own ideas into the mix. So I'll split this into 5 main parts: the terrain, the lighting, the objects, the effects, and the optimizations. To start with terrain, one of the most common requests is the ability to terraform the terrain by dragging the terrain body, as stated by Ducain, Kim, and Ascent Hyperion. This is something that's absolutely necessary. Placing terrain blocks around the map in Halo 5 made everything look blocky and incomplete. The ability to shape the land with a consistent flow would add a much more professional feel to it. Also, I want to see more than one textures and foliage options built into the terrain options. In a bit more detail, something Ducain suggested was the ability to change aspects such as hue, saturation, and contrast of the terrain textures. This could help spruce in some variety or to help fully sell a map's theme. The canvases should just be reduced to one canvas, as Kim suggested, for maximum control. But I'd say have one extra preset for those still getting familiar with the mode. Another aspect of the terrain that needs substantial improvement is water. Water in Halo 5 is quite frankly pretty bad. It doesn't stack up well even to Halo 3's water in terms of its visuals and effects. In Forge, forgers often resort to creating fake water since it just looks more convincing. Water in the future Halo needs to have actual physics and a much higher graphical fidelity. Now some of you may question if it's even possible to do so, since Halo Infinite will not only be on Project Scarlet, but would also have to run on the current Xbox One, which was released way back in 2013. Well, it very much will be able to run on the stock Xbox One, because the reason that these issues existed in Halo 5 boils down to two problems: the lack of time and the limitations of the engine. Halo 5's engine simply didn't allow for these effects to run at smooth performance. So seeing as Halo Infinite runs off a brand new engine and has been cooking for over half a decade, these issues are practically eliminated. As far as the terrain goes, these are the only two actual issues. So let's move on to lighting. Now, lighting was one of the biggest problems with Halo 5 in general, and it was ever so present in Forge too. Unlike water, there weren't any workarounds to Halo 5's lackluster shaders. Every reflection was in this repetitive radial pattern, and shadows were often blocky and had big aliasing issues. Now, new and improved shaders would do most of the job, and they have, as we saw in the Discover Hope trailer. But there's a lot more things that we'll definitely appreciate too, such as light sources with different behaviors. To name a few, lens flares, invisible light sources, and volumetric lighting, and just like with terrain, the ability to modify their colors in depth. Another thing that would be cool is changing the time of day, or even whole day and night cycles. This would add a lot more life to the maps themselves. Now, objects are yet another factor that attributed to the blocky look of Halo 5's Forge. Now, the problem here was not that we didn't get sufficient items. In fact, there was a huge variety. The problem arises from the fact that everything had to be built from scratch, which combined with the fact that there was a limited budget meant that not all objects looked all that great. A simple fix for this would be to take a page out of Far Cry 5's book and give us pre-built assets from previous Halo games. Things such as buildings, crates, large-scale vehicles, and many miscellaneous items. Using objects that are professionally modeled yield a miles better result than those made in Forge. To make it even better, utilize an asset store where the community can upload models they've made in Blender or other programs. Now, the effects. Here's what I'd imagine would be the hardest to implement. Now firstly, it would be awesome to see volumetric effects, such as fog, smoke and such. Weather effects such as rain should return, but with more variety such as storms, clouds, snow and such. As for object effects, Skoopa suggested a genius idea of keyframe scripting. For those who aren't into video editing, keyframing basically allows you to specify the position of an object at a given moment in time. This would be way more intuitive than the current scripting system, and would allow us to create complex paths, and that too much more easily. And of course there's AI. Probably the number one most requested feature. Artificial intelligence can allow us to make much more dynamic maps and new game modes. If they pair this with the ability to add voice dialogues as well as pop-up menus, we could see custom campaigns being built by the community. Finally, I wanted to touch on the optimizations. Ascend Hyperion talked about how Halo 5's Forge slows down after you start placing a high number of objects. Again, I think this has to do a lot with the engine, but I'd really recommend that 343 craft the slip space engine with Forge in mind. Well, that just about wraps it up. Here's pretty much all we want to see improved. There are obviously other things, but these are the core aspects that I think Halo Infinite needs to nail down. Again, I want to thank everyone who joined this video. If you guys have any of your own suggestions, not just for Forge but any other aspect of the game, leave them down in the comments below. My channel will basically serve as a spot for feedback, and I may feature your ideas in the future. So leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe because a lot more of these collabs are on the way. I'll see you all later, so stay machoic.